Oh. Greetings, everyone. At this moment, we'd like to take the time to thank Madam Chair Lynn and Senator Simplin for allowing us the opportunity to come before you and present today.
Yes, I should tell members this was at the recommendation of Senator Simplin because he thought it was a very worthwhile presentation.
Thank you. To begin with, I'm Mohammed Shakir.
My name is Jacob Jackson.
And I'm Antonio Morales.
But tell us where you're from also.
We're from Tampa, the University of South Florida. We're students from there. We stand before you today on behalf of the Florida Student Educational Policy, which is an organization where students from across the state have come together to discuss a number of issues such as teacher quality, higher education, and financial aid, and how we can improve these issues that.
Thank you, ma'am. A quote from Access to Success is, "A growing proportion of private and public financial aid goes to students who need it least through merit-based programs such as Florida Bright Futures, tax incentives, and institutional aid policies such as more selective institutions that favor higher income students." And basically what that's getting to is that more financial aid is going towards the merit-based students rather than need-based students, where we're trying to find some type of equality or a balance in between the two.
Now, with some of our data that we pulled up, the first is showing the growing inflation in the cost of attendance and tuition and fees for public four-year institutions, private four-year institutions, and also public two-year institutions. So you see that the cost of attendance is constantly going up with these institutions. Now, this graph is showing the growing disparity in financial aid. If you see the poorer the family, the larger the unmet need for financial aid is. And we see those kind of break down this graph. If you look at the orange, yellowish, that's the cost of attendance. If you look at the green, that's the EFC, the expected family income, family contribution. If you look at the blue, that represents financial aid. Now this could be scholarships, Pell Grants, or other forms of aid. If you look at the red, we're looking at a deficit in aid, and the black is a surplus in aid. And pretty much the problem that we're trying to address is that if you look at that low and middle income brackets, they're having deficit in financial aid, meaning they have to take out those extra student loans. They're perpetuating their debt, and they're really not having the time to focus to their studies because they have other factors against picking up second job. They're having to take out loans and everything. So that's pretty much the main focus, is that we're trying to meet this deficit here. And if you look at those students with the higher family contributions, you see that these students actually have a surplus. If you look at the students with the $112,000 or more family contribution, they're at around a $21,000 surplus in funds that they have available to them. Next slide. See here the state appropriations toward education. We see that Florida is below the national average of appropriations to the toward education. And if we look at other states that are similar to population size and diversity, such as Texas and California, we see that they're above Florida and also above the national level. And if you also see states with smaller populations, such as Delaware, they're also above the national level and above Florida. And now we're going to touch on Bright Futures. Earlier we said that Bright Futures is an insufficient component to financial aid package for low-income students. And as you can see that Bright Futures, the criteria is gradually increasing year by year. And we understand that there's a proposed accelerated increase in the Bright Futures criteria, and we feel that this will be a problem. Now, why would this be a problem? Our studies that we looked up show that there's a direct correlation between test scores and family income. So this is saying that students who are receiving that higher family income, they're achieving higher on these standardized tests, which are the criteria for Bright Futures. Whereas the low and the middle income students, they're receiving lower. And if the accelerated criteria for Bright Futures is going to continue to increase, it's going to weed out these middle and lower income students from receiving the scholarship.
I have to ask you something.
Yes, ma'am.
And with all your data, then is your conclusion that we should, lower our requirements, and are your expectations, you expect a free college education? And question number 3 is, why don't any of the 3 of you have a Bright Future scholarship?
Okay. Now, if you mind, I'm going to answer those questions from 3 up. Now, you said, why don't the 3 of us have a Bright Future scholarship? Well, myself, I come from a single-parent home. My mother, she does not work. I'm a first-time college student, first-generation college student. None of my other family has been in college. So when I'm going to apply for college, I didn't learn about Bright Future until around my senior year. I had to pick up a second job. I worked part-time, around 20 hours a week. So I didn't have the time to devote solely to education as some students would. I went to C average school wasn't the best, so we didn't have a lot of those resources as some other students had, and that's one of the reasons why I didn't have the Bright Futures. I actually had the test scores. I just got the test scores, but I did not have the GPA requirements. Now, and we're saying a student like myself who did not have Bright Futures, that shouldn't be a reason why I can't go to a selective college or a university. At the University of South Florida, even though I didn't have the GPA requirements in high school, I maintained above a 3.0. I'm very involved in extracurricular activities. I am the president of the NAACP at my university. I'm a USF student ambassador, and I'm also in a mentoring program. So that's saying that these students who aren't receiving this scholarship, they have unmet need, but that doesn't mean that they're not capable of matriculating through college and being very successful.
No, and I agree with you on
this page, and we'll see that we're trying to address those deficits in the middle income and lower income brackets. And one of our solutions that we have is the Florida legislature should establish a trust fund to provide grants to students from middle income families as defined by the U.S. Department of Education and provide a tax credit to corporations who contribute to the fund. Funds should be distributed following the Florida Student Assistance Grant module. So that would address the middle income bracket deficit. We also have another solution that will address the middle income bracket deficit, which would be the Florida legislature should encourage institutions of higher education to reallocate a percentage of institutional aid to support students from middle income families who demonstrate unmet need. And I will transfer it over to
And I don't think you or any of us want to lower our standards, but you made a very good point. You were not getting the kind, first of all, you didn't have the information about Bright Futures early enough. Secondly, you didn't get any help in maybe making out applications for a lot of financial help and so forth. So those are things that I think have to be corrected, and we've talked about that many times. So those are very good points you're making. But we're going to let you go on, members, and if we can, we'll get to the end, and then we'll ask questions.
And we'd like to round up saying thank you on behalf of the Florida Student Education Policy Conference on letting us be here today, and we would now hand over the floor to Madam Senator Clinton.
I want to thank you very much.
Well, I wanted to thank them for a wonderful presentation. They've actually swayed me on some issues that to look at some things that I never thought I would look at. And I think many of the members on those committees have been trying to persuade me, and they've done a better job, so I want to commend them. One of the things they've made me realize is the great equalizer. If you come from a family without as much wealth, a lot of these students have to work. And if you come from a wealthy family and you never have to work, you have a huge advantage because you're able to study a lot more all the time. And when I hire somebody, I don't look just at the GPA. I look if they've worked. If they worked while they're in high school, if they worked while they're in college. They may not have as high a GPA, but they're a more talented, they're a more valuable employee because they've actually worked in the real world. And I think you happen to learn more working a lot of times than you do in the classrooms, that real life experience. Who knows, maybe that's some sort of equalizer. I know we do require community service to get Bright Futures, but perhaps we should give credit for high school kids to have actually physically worked. Because being a business person, I think that is the most valuable experience. As a matter of fact, our country was founded on apprenticeship, where we valued actually physically working and learning a craft and a skill. And if you've worked either retail or even for an engineering company or a medical office or a nursing home, maybe we ought to give some credit for that in the Bright Future equation. I think it would be a great equalizer and a fair one too, because that is a very, very important component of education.
We do have some recommendations.